If you own a healthcare practice, you've likely thought about your exit, maybe with some excitement, maybe with some dread. Selling your practice, no doubt, can be one of the most stressful and financially significant events of your life. So in this episode, we sit down with a doctor who recently went through the process. He shares his real-world insights on deciding when to sell, choosing the right buyer, surviving the delays, and adjusting to life after sale. So whether you're years away or already eyeing the exit door, this conversation is going to give you clarity and confidence to plan your transition the right way. So stay tuned. Practice owners, tired of working hard but not seeing the financial results you deserve? I'm Eric Miller, and my best-selling book, How to Become a Financial Beast, is your game changer. Learn how to maximize profits, pay yourself right, and build wealth outside your practice. Download now for free. Okay, guys, welcome back to the Financial Beast podcast. I am your host, Eric Miller, co-owner, chief advisor of Econologics Financial Advisors. We show healthcare owners how to clean up, set up, and grow up their finances, showing you guys how to harness the power of your practice, build personal wealth, and eventually go out at the top of your game. You can check us out at econologicsfinancialadvisors.com. And speaking of going out at the top of their game, we always have people that are asking about exiting. It's been a popular topic over the last, probably 5 to 7 years. We've seen a tremendous amount of activity. So I always like to bring on people that have been through things and that have experienced it, that have like firsthand knowledge of it, because it is the cycle of ownership. You are going to exit at some point in time. And it can be a very challenging thing to confront. So I think any bit of information you guys can have on it is going to be helpful. So that being said, I'm going to introduce my guest, who is Dr. Dimitrios Kostopoulos. I said that right too, didn't I? And he's only been a client for
awesome.
10 years now. And he's currently the co-founder and owner of Hands-On Diagnostics. I'm going to have him actually explain exactly what they do, because he's going to say it much better than I do. But he recently went through a successful exit. So we wanted to talk about that. So Dimi, the floor is yours. Maybe just explain a little bit about what Hands-On Diagnostic does currently.
Sure. First of all, let me just say, Eric, that I thank you very much for what you do for private practice and for professionals, because frankly, and I remember, I've been in the area of physical therapy since 1987. And a private practice owner since 1992. So it's been many years. And frankly, when I got into the private practice in 1992, I never thought of the possibility of an exit. I never thought of the possibility of an exit strategy. I was more about, okay, how do we enter the space? How do we survive in the space? How do we expand in the space? I never had the idea of exiting. But anyway, we'll get to that. Hands-On Diagnostics is an organization that helps physical therapists and other healthcare professionals to develop, expand a diagnostic testing practice that includes electromyography testing and musculoskeletal ultrasound testing that runs in parallel to their physical therapy practice. And not only it offers significant clinical value, but also significant additional revenues. So that's basically Hands-On Diagnostics.
Excellent. So if you are a physical therapist and are thinking about, doing something like this, Dimi and Dimi's group is one that I would highly recommend that you contact, and will allow you guys to, tell them how you would contact them later on in the show. But let's talk about the exit, because you've recently been through an exit, and we're not going to get into the details of who you sold to or how much money it was or any of those things, because quite honestly, that's really not that important. I think what was important was the process and the things that you thought about going through it, and just the experience that you had, because everyone's going to go through it at some point in time. So you can make it a pleasurable experience or not. But let's go back to like the decision, like the moment, and maybe there wasn't just a moment. Like, do you remember though the time frame where you're like, all right, it's probably a good idea to sell? And then what were you thinking at that point in time?
Yeah. So there are a couple of different ways to think about this. So I'll give you a parallel, which is the stock market, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the stock market goes up, goes down, goes back up, goes back down, but hopefully it is in an ongoing uptrending fashion. And the reason I'm using this parallel is because we say you cannot time the stock market, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen exactly. To some regard, you cannot necessarily time, any developments that can occur that can affect your private practice. Economical developments, insurance industry developments, political developments, and so on and so forth. So I would say the two most important factors for us, my business partner and I, was number one, that we felt that we had developed the practice at a really good point, and also we were at the point where we were ready to shift attention to other areas that we could help more, expand more outside of just the physical therapy component of the practice. Yeah, our organization may be a little unique, but not other organizations can have similar tangents, have three different areas: the physical therapy area, we have the HUDS business, which is the consulting and education for diagnostic testing. And also we have our local diagnostic business. So it was time for us to put more attention and more expansion in the areas that we feel that can expand a lot more than just the physical therapy. And that was the right time for us to make the move for, exiting from the physical therapy area.
So there was kind of an emotional readiness component there, that not like you guys didn't make the decision on an emotional basis, although, I mean, I'm sure there's some part of that, but there was just there was a game that you guys had played. You had felt like you guys were in a pretty, I mean, it's never going to be perfect, but you felt like there was other things for you to do at that point in time that you could focus on. Another
game, because the word you use, a game, that's so important, because if you consider, and some people may think it's a little bit attractive to think, oh my God, I'm having this game now and I'm going to, sell the business and then I'm going to retire. Mm-hmm. And they may feel temporarily excited about the idea, but let me tell you something. Afterwards, how much golf they can play or how many vacations, at the end of the day, they'll get bored. Yeah. And other people around them, they may get annoyed with them, or they may annoy other people if they are, 24/7 in their house without doing anything else. Their spouses, perhaps they'll get annoyed with them. So you need a game really to transition to. You cannot just say, okay, I'm giving up now, I'm out, and nothing else after this.
No, we've seen probably the worst examples of that when people did not have something, because when you own your practice, I mean, whether you knew it or not, I mean, your attention, I mean, you were going 180 mile an hour, it seemed like, all the time, and all of a sudden you go from going fast to zero. Okay. And that does have an effect on people, and it certainly can mess with people. And we've seen it, unfortunately, turn to, bad games that people end up playing at that point in time. So I think you had something that was going to fulfill that part of, your spirit, your desire to want to do things and help. And that was, that I would encourage everyone to make sure you have something that's going to match that going forward. So, okay. And then you both have made the decision because you had a partner and you guys were in agreement on this, which I think is a big deal too, especially if you have partnerships too. Was that hard to do to make sure you guys were both on the same page?
I think that after 35 years of business partnership and 40 something years of friendship, we are at a pretty good sync to have very similar viewpoints.
That's excellent. Yeah, of course you guys are. And then from a financial perspective, I mean, I kind of know the answer to this because I was, part of that. But what was the financial incentive for it? Not the specific numbers, but what were you thinking? Like, maybe it's time to take some chips off the table. What was that process like?
So look, yes. I mean, when through the years, whatever, I mean, you may have savings, you may have your 401ks and this and that, or other investments. But I assume that for most people who are watching this, they have a big chunk of their investment within their business, right?
Yes.
So a time comes where you have to decide to take, let's say, some chips off the table, where you can put them in a more secure investment that can provide a greater sense of security, financial security or financial freedom, whatever somebody calls it, and an acquisition of this kind can provide that.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to, since we're talking about finances, I want to just give a couple of pointers here to the people who are watching this. So the first thing is that essentially your practice or practices will be evaluated and you will be offered something called an enterprise value. The enterprise value is essentially how the organization that will acquire you value your practice. Now, the enterprise value has two components. Two components make up the enterprise value. The first component is your EBITDA. And a lot of people talk about the EBITDA, but your a big component of what creates your EBITDA number is your profitability, your profit, your bottom line at your practice, and of course with several add-ons that are being added to that bottom line number, right? Because right now you may be paying, let's say, I don't know, you may be paying your car lease or your marketing dinners or other type of things through your business for tax purposes also. But those are not things that the acquisition company will continue paying. You will pay it out of your pocket in the future. So these things can be added on in your total EBITDA. So then, as I said, your EBITDA number depends a lot on your degree of profitability. And I'll talk a little bit more about profitability later on. And then you have the multiple. So that EBITDA will be multiplied by a factor that the acquisition company is willing to pay, and that creates your enterprise value at the end. Do you think it would be valuable if I talk a little bit about some of the the things that influence the multiple? And
absolutely, because not all multiples are the same, and there are different degrees of factors of why a acquisition group would pay a higher multiple than for someone. So if you want to dig into that, that's fine.
So again, many people may have different experiences, but based on my experience on this and my research, I find 3 different things that can affect the multiple offered by an acquisition company. The first thing is it has to do with your total EBITDA. Usually, when your bottom line, when your EBITDA is greater than 1 million, companies will tend to pay a higher multiple. So that is one thing. So EBITDA plays a role on that. The second thing that plays a role on that is number of locations that you have. So let me give an example. If a company, if an organization has one location, huge location with 1,000 appointments per week, let's say, right? And they have an EBITDA of $1 million, and you have another organization that still has an EBITDA of $1 million, and they still have 1,000 appointments per week, but those 1,000 appointments per week, they're spread over 3 locations. The company with the 3 locations most likely will achieve a little higher multiple than the company with 1 location, because the acquisition company sees the opportunity of you having multiple locations, and they feel that they can grow each one of them more than a single location. Also, greater number of locations provides a diversification and a risk, mitigation, compared to just a single location. Again, if you manage to have, close to 10 or more than 10 locations, then that number increases. And the third thing that I found, and in our case was very important, is that if your practice offers something special, something unique, if you are not just the regular bread and butter PT practice, but you have something that differentiates you among other PT practices. And for us, the fact that we had the diagnostic component in the practice was a big differentiator, because not many practices have that. There are very few practices that they have a diagnostic component, an EMG, MSK ultrasound component right now. So that as a differentiator, a company that acquires you see it as something that can help you expand that practice compared to the competition in the area, but also they see that as an additional revenue generator. So those are the 3 things I saw that really boost a multiple to a higher number. EBITDA more than $1 million, number of practices, and a differentiator component, something that differentiates you among the rest of the practices.
And you would look at that and say, well, like, what's the difference in multiple? I mean, even if it's it goes from a 7 multiple to an 8 multiple, that's not much. And I'm like, okay, well, what's 1 times your profit? It is a lot.
Yeah. I mean, think about this. We talked about, let's say, the example that I gave for $1 million, right? I gave 2 practices, $1 million. If you have a a company that will receive, let's say, a multiple of 7 versus another company that will receive a multiple of 8, that's $1 million in difference. So that makes a big difference there.
It makes a big difference. It makes, when you're talking about the law of large numbers, even a slight increase is going to have, an incredible impact on the value, and it does. So that was good. I always say to people, revenues for vanity, profits for sanity, and it's true, because that first thing you said, you do need to have good profitability and a good EBITDA. You can have 20 locations, and if they're doing a 3% profit margin or a 2% profit margin, you're not going to get a high multiple. So, make sure that you guys are taking advantage of that.
And look, this even 1% better profitability will really have a significant number on a multiple. Let's look at this for a moment. Let's say somehow you can increase your profit by $100,000, right? Because you added a new service line, because you managed to cut expense from somewhere. Although cutting expense is not going to gain you that much. It's like, what do you do to increase revenue? It's much easier to increase revenue than cut down expense.
Yes.
But let's say that you manage somehow to put on your bottom line, on top of your bottom line, $100,000. That $100,000 is no longer $100,000. All of a sudden, is $800,000 if you're talking about an 8 times multiple, or $700,000 for a 7 times multiple. So it is very, very important.
It is, not only for you personally, because that's part of, like, how do you minimize your wealth gap? Wealth gap is like what we try to calculate for people, like, how much wealth do you need? What do you currently have, and what's the fastest way to like decrease that gap? And honestly, to increase your profit margins in your business, just because of what you said right there, for every dollar of profit that you make, you're going to increase your personal net worth by a multiple of that. And could be 7, could be 8, could be 9 times. So that is how you're going to do it. And it's so important that people realize that as they go forward. So that's actually excellent advice.
Yeah.
I want to talk about negotiations, because when you got to the point where you selected the group, we could probably spend a whole hour on like what it took for you to maybe select the group. But I you know what, maybe just like a couple of factors there of why you chose the group that you did, so people can have like a bit of a thought process of like what goes into selecting a partner, essentially, or someone that's going to acquire your practice. Let me talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. First of all, let me say that initially when we started the process, we thought that, okay, we'll just navigate this without any help from an agency or anything like that. And we found it rather challenging to totally navigate it without any help. So we end up actually using an agency to help, to represent us in the negotiation process. And we received a few offers. We did not receive a single offer. We received a few offers from a few organizations. However, it was so critical, the final selection of the organization. And through the process of discussing the offers and having meetings with the different companies that they offered us, made us an offer, going through clarifications, you could understand a bit more whether the focus of the company that acquires you was one that agrees with you, with your focus, with your overall purpose of business. Let me give you an example of this. If if let's say as a business, you have as a purpose to help people improve their function, and you also have as a purpose to grow as a business and help your employees also grow, right? These are three purposes you have. And you have an employee, somebody that you are to hire, and when you ask that person what their goals, what their purpose is, let's say their purpose is to, they don't want to do anything with growth. They don't want to have to do anything with expansion. That their entire life they have done anything to grow personally or learn something new. Will that person serve you well clinically? No, because if they don't, they're not willing to update their knowledge and expertise, they are not going to be helping your patients more. Is that person going to help your business grow? Absolutely not, because that's not part of their universe. It's not part of their purpose in life. In a similar capacity, when you are looking for an organization to acquire you, you have to try to understand what is their overall goals, what are their purposes as an organization, what are their values, what they value most, and see how much those values and goals and purposes meet yours, because otherwise you're going to be in conflict. Finally, the selection we made for the organization, it was so good for us because we have been treated with the utmost respect. We have shared values with that organization, and we really feel very good about the whole process. And that is very important because you don't want to sell and then next day to be regretting it.
Especially after, 30 years, 20 years of ownership and things that you've built, you're just like, okay, over to you. And we've definitely seen the other way around sometimes. And, I've talked with owners afterwards and, 3 months later, 6 months later, they're like, oh, I just made a big mistake. And I'm like, I don't think you spend enough time on the front end really, really making sure that you understood what, just like you said, what their goals and purposes and shared values would be. So don't be afraid to take some time to do that. Don't just rush to get a deal done, so to speak.
Because Eric, at the end of the day, yes, any of these big companies, as they should, they have a board of directors. They have to look at their own profitability. They have to look at how they can expand their own business line. But at the same time, is there a place for respect, for value, for you, for what you have created, and for your own employees and associates? Because I assume that you care about the employees, that they have supported you all this time in your business, right? And helped you grow your business. So caring for them is important as part of your overall negotiation process.
Yeah, I would think that you would want to make sure that the employees are going to be in a better condition with the new acquirer than what they were, so that you can communicate that to them. So you guys, your lives are going to be better because of this and then what we're doing.
Actually, in our situation, I'll tell you that the benefits that we were able to afford to the employees as a smaller company, like the PTO, the health insurance, and all that stuff, they were not as good as the benefits they are getting now from the larger company. So people did welcome that.
Yep, sure. I'm like, hey, all right, that's great. That's what I'm talking about. Like, I think that's a good part of, the deal is just in making sure people know that, like, this is a good thing. Because there's a stigma of, oh, you guys are selling to corporate, it's going to be this or that, and but really showing people like, no, like this is going to be better for you because of that. I'm sure that conversation came into the fray at some point in time.
Definitely, and yeah, I mean, in the very first few days or weeks of the transition, everybody's a little nervous. What's going to happen? They need clarifications. They need reassurance,
Yep.
which you have to provide. And if the organization that acquired you does provide that reassurance and communication to the employees, then things are much easier.
Yes. So when it came to the negotiations, and you said something where you actually had, an agency or a mergers and acquisitions team to help you with this, which I would encourage, especially a sale of your size, as far as how big you were. Having someone that has been through it and done it and has, communication lines or experience in this, I think it's paramount. I mean, I know that's a cost to do it, and a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to spend the 4%, 5%, 10, whatever it is. I've seen different amounts, but it's a big deal, and you don't get to do it again. So I would make sure you do it right.
Yeah.
And making sure. But did they do a lot of the negotiations, or were you part of that as well when it came to?
So here's what I'm going to say on that, on the amount, right? Everything is negotiable.
Yes.
So with the agency, negotiate your
yes.
rate, okay? And before we decided which agency we were going to hire, we actually interviewed. We interviewed 3 different agencies, and we got recommendations from other people who had gone through the process. At the end of the day, one of the things that was important to us was we selected an agency that was a little smaller, not one of the very big, very well-known agencies, just because we did not want to be just another number.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to establish a relationship. Like Eric, like you, Econologics is, I would call it, a boutique financial advisory firm. You establish a relationship. You are not like any of these, like the Schwabs,
like a Raymond James or Schwab's.
Exactly. So,
I mean, it'd be nice to have their balance sheet sometimes, but to your point, we try to value more of the relationship and the niche that we work in, but I totally get what you mean.
And what the agency that we selected, the individual that worked with us did, the most valuable thing was that he advised us in every step of the process when there was like uncertainty or nervousness about something, or when we would prepare the different forms and reports, because there's a gazillion of papers that you have to provide at the end of the day.
Yes.
He would review all that, and he would look at them, and he would advise, and he would suggest changes that needed to be made. And of course, he participated and he did all of the financial negotiations. And there were a couple of times that came back and forth a little bit on a couple of items. But the way he handled the situation, I mean, pretty much, I can't think of something that we asked for and we did not get, which is a good thing.
That's a great thing. Yes, that's a great thing. Good. So getting over the finish line, I know you talk about a little bit about the patience that you have to have, because, there is a point in time where, most of these big acquisition groups, you're not their only deal, and they have to get approval from their boards, and they have to, and they have to finance these deals, and they have to do all these things. And, sometimes that puts a delay on, what you would this should be closed by now, right? So maybe talk about like having some of that patience and how.
So a couple of things. Definitely, every single cycle is going to have some kind of hiccup. There is no
Yes.
cycle that will never have any kind of hiccup, right? So there will be some ups, downs, or things to be handled, and yes, at moments it can be a bit nerve wracking, and you may get a couple of sleepless nights, especially at the very end, getting to the finish line, and you're like, okay,
Today's the day.
today is the day. Is it happening? Because it's not happening until the funds hit your account. That's the thing, right? So the funds hit your account, and then you can celebrate, but not before that. But indeed, you are not their only deal, right? They are dealing with many different practices. They are having in the pipeline several deals. However, remember the things that I said about the multiple? I said larger EBITDA, the number of locations, but also a differentiator. When you have a differentiator, that can put you
Top of the
ahead
line. Yeah.
on the top of the line, because that company is more interested in being involved and give priority to an organization that they believe they will create something bigger, better, different than the rest. If you are just doing, if you are like the regular PT, I don't know, with 2 locations, 3 locations, okay, the deal will happen. But you're going to be in the lineup as several others with 2, 3 locations and no unique proposition, no unique differentiator. Once you have that, once you have the unique proposition, the unique differentiator, that will put you on the top of the line.
Excellent. So, I heard from there, you're going to have to expect that things aren't always going to be rainbows and roses. There are going to be hiccups. They're probably going to come back to you and ask you, similar questions. Do they look at how the practice produces in that time frame between the due diligence and the close date too? Is that something that they're keeping their eye on as well? Like
Yes.
how well this thing produces?
Yes, they are, because they don't. And look, let's say your numbers, as the months go by until you close, the numbers may go slightly up, or hopefully more up, or they may go slightly down. And that is okay. They have an expectation to that. But if all of a sudden, for some reason, your visits go down, let's say by 30%, that is an alert. That's alarming.
Yes.
What happened? Did you close down a location? Did you lose all of a sudden, 3 therapists? What happened? So as long as, there might be a slight fluctuation, 5% or so up or down, and that's not a big deal. Now, in our situation, pretty much we had a steady growth up to the finish line, and that was very beneficial for us.
Yes. So I would just tell people, just make sure that the productivity continues and you don't take your eye off of that, while you're doing the negotiation, because your attention does get spread pretty thin then.
Definitely.
So, okay, then lastly, the day happens, all of the contracts are signed. I don't know if it's an attorney that calls you and says, congratulations, this deal is done. Look out for the wire that's going to hit your bank account. And it probably doesn't hit you right away, does it? It probably, and maybe it even hasn't completely hit you, but what is there a point where you do start to feel some relief in terms of that, and kind of maybe because it's only been I think it's been 3 months for you?
Actually, for us, it's been only right now under 2, just under 2. Yeah.
Okay.
Just
Time
under
does
2.
fly.
So I'll tell you, the first, actually, a couple of days you're like, okay, what happened here? Really? Did we do that? So it's kind of you don't 100% realize that you got to that point, um, and then um, it hits you and in us in a very good way because we felt really acknowledged and
Hmm.
we felt proud about the recognition of our work in the past 35 years. And we felt good about that. That, hey, our work, our hard work, the choices we made, um, the expansion plan we've had, the associations we had with people, all that paid off at the end. And we felt very proud about that. And actually, in our situation, to demonstrate, our gratitude and gratefulness also to a variety of the associates that
Mm.
helped us get where we are at. We even decided to share some the nice bonus structure, um, uh, share some of it with some of the key employees in our business. So,
Yes.
yeah, and that's
Excellent. And now there's, because you just said you took your mom on a vacation. That was pretty awesome to do.
yeah.
And I know you've been on a couple other things, but as far as like your involvement with the organization, I mean, is it pretty much a clean break at this point in time? I'm sure there's still some things that you have to do and
Yeah.
report at this point, but
Actually, I'm busier than ever, and I
yeah,
like it this way. I want it
yeah,
this way because, on the one hand, we are fulfilling the transition obligations because there are some transition obligations for
yeah,
the next several months. Um, but also, I'm putting a lot of attention in the other games that are still on the table for us and expanding the local diagnostic business, expanding HUDs,
mm-hmm,
and really creating even a bigger game there. So for us, as I said before, it was not like, okay, let's sell and retire. For us, it was more of, okay, let's create a greater financial security and let's move to the next step where we are able to grow more the other businesses that we felt have a greater growth potential than the PT business at this point in time.
yes. Well, I'm pretty confident that you probably didn't expect that when you first started your practice that you were going to have the kind of exit that you did. And I don't think most people do that get into this business is like, oh, I'm going to make, bazillion dollars in doing this. But it certainly doesn't mean that it can't happen where you really do take care of yourself and your family and your employees and all of those things by having a really successful exit. And it can be done. It takes some work.
Yeah.
But it is, I think, something that a lot of people in healthcare deserve to have a really dignified exit.
And,
Uh,
you and you know something, Eric, if you don't mind, especially because nowadays there is a lot of discussion about uh, immigration and the American dream and all that.
mhm.
Here is what I want to say. I came to the United States on August 8th, 1987,
Wow.
with $1,000 in my pocket to make it through. I thought it would last me for 6 months. Um, Going through studies, I came at that time to do my master's degree. I immigrated from Greece. And my goodness, 1987. And now that we're recording this, July of 2025, um, well,
Yeah.
it made a big difference.
Yeah, that's how I mean, you did it the right way, and yeah, I mean, that should be the American dream right there.
Yeah.
It's a great story. I love it. Thanks, Timmy. Hey, how do people get a hold of you if they're interested in the diagnostic?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to plug two things here, right? Of course, hands-on diagnostics. You can go to handsondiagnostics.com. Handsondiagnostics.com. That's easy. And you can reach us there. You can reach me there. But I want to plug also my podcast, to which you're going to be a guest soon.
Nice.
And people can go to yourpracticeyourmoney.com, yourpracticeyourmoney.com,
like it.
to look at different episodes, past episodes, and to see future episode with Eric also. So, and that's it.
I appreciate it. All right. We will talk to you guys on the next podcast. Thank you so much. Thanks, Demi.
Thank you.